There's something dangerous at the Dyatlov Pass. It was my dog who saved my life there, Rambo. That's his name. I was the one who trained him up for the canine unit when he was still a pup. The station got him from a place called Angel Shepherds. It was a kennel that specialized in breeding guard dogs, and he really was a godsend, that dog. He saved my life more times than I can count. He was the best partner I ever had back in the force, and when his stabbing forced me into early retirement, Rambo was with me every step of the way. He wouldn't work with anyone else, so the precinct let me take him home. And since then, it was just him and me. Ever since I retired, I've kept to myself. All my friends are still active duty cops, and they didn't get a lot of time off. So I didn't really have anyone or any reason to get out of the house. The only time I left my place was to take Rambo out on walks. Things went on like that for a while when Lonnie called me about the trip to Dyatlov Pass. I was knee-deep in self-pity and beer bottles. Oh, come on, it'll be good for you, Nick. Just like old times, except with more snow and less paperwork, he said. I could always count on Lonnie to say the craziest things I've ever heard. So that's how I ended up in some Russian village in the middle of nowhere. Apparently that village was there even before the Dyatlov Pass got its name. Nowadays, they make their living selling supplies to the tourists heading out to the pass. I checked to make sure we had everything we needed. Andre, the tour guide, was filling up the snowmobiles. Lonnie was hooking up the sled with all our stuff. Our plan was to spend a night camping near where those hikers died, and Andre seemed more excited about the whole thing than me and Lonnie were. He said it was extremely rare that people were allowed to stay there overnight. The villagers refused to sell enough supplies for trips like that, something about how it's too dangerous. But recently, they've started warming up to the idea of letting people stay the night. Only for small groups, though, and the conditions had to be just right. Lucky us, I guess. Now, the ride up to the site was actually a blast. The view was gorgeous in a harsh kind of way. Even Rambo looked like he was having fun from his spot on the sled. It felt great to be moving again. It was the happiest I'd felt in a long time. I did hear about what happened to those Russians that died here, but I'll be honest, I didn't really care about that. In fact, I can almost forget I was going camping on the other side of the world, out there in the mountains. It almost felt like I was back in Colorado, back when me and Lonnie used to go on hunting trips together. I felt like I was part of something again. By afternoon, we were setting up camp. Rambo was off leash and sniffing around. Andre and I started with the tents. Meanwhile, Lonnie gathered wood for the fire. Hey, Nick, remember that time you forgot to stake the den? That thing almost carried us down a canyon. Lonnie's laugh cut through the crisp air. Yeah, just make sure your stew isn't going to poison us this time, I said back. It was just like old times, but as the sun began to dip, Rambo started acting up. He'd sniff around our tents and let out a growl. Andre noticed too. Your dog senses something, he said. Animals often do, especially here. The land is not restful. Pretty soon it was completely dark out. We gathered round the fire, but the cold continued to bite. But at least the food smelled good. We had a stew going on a portable stove. Me and Lonnie were happy to catch up while we waited for it to cook. But then Andre pulled out his compass. It was an old-fashioned piece on a long silver chain. Andre liked to say it was his good luck charm, but as he fiddled with it, a puzzled look crossed his face. Look at this thing, he said. Instead of pointing in, the needle wouldn't stop moving. Andre waved it from side to side, and we understood what the compass was doing. It was following Rambo. He hadn't calmed down since we set up the tents. Every few minutes he'd sniff around the camp and growl, and everywhere he went, the needle followed him. It's just the mountains messing with a compass, right? I asked. Andre shook his head. No, something's not right. We're heading back down first thing in the morning. It's too risky at night, but we're not staying here any longer than we have to. Stay in your tents tonight. Keep your radios with you at all times. Do not leave for any reason. We ate our dinner quickly that night, and right after we cleaned up, everyone headed straight for their tents. Except for Rambo. He whined by the entrance of our tent, and when I tried to go in, he grabbed my sleeve to stop me. Hey, Rambo, calm down, bud. Don't you want to get some sleep? We're going to leave soon, all right? I promise, I said, trying to calm him down. But he wouldn't back down. I had to carry him into the tent. He eventually settled down and curled up next to me, next to his warm fur. I fell asleep instantly, but it didn't last long. I heard something in my sleep. It jolted me awake at first. I thought it was Rambo whining again, but as I came to, I realized it wasn't him. It was something else. It was music coming from outside. It sounded like some kind of flute, but low and buzzing, and it sounded close. I reached for the radio to check in with Lonnie. Maybe he was messing around. I don't know. Trying to lighten the mood from earlier. Hey Lonnie, is that you playing the pipes? I asked. There was a pause before Lonnie's voice came through. What are you talking about, Nick? Are you crazy? Man, I was asleep, he said. So you don't hear the music outside? I asked. Oh man, you think there's someone out there? Maybe it's Andre. Oh, this ain't the time for a concert, though, he replied. I switched channels and called him up. He sounded groggy when he answered. I told him about the music and how it's still playing. Andre's voice came through clearly. Nick, I don't hear anything. I'm just here in my tent. I checked back on Lonnie. All clear on my end, buddy, he said. And then a third voice came through. Checking in, it said. I froze. Rambo started barking, his tail between his legs, and then the music burst out through the radio. It filled the tent. It sounded much clearer than it should have been. I tried to shut the radio off, but the song kept playing. Rambo howled, mixing with the notes. I flipped through the channels to get it to stop, but it was no use. It played from every channel, even the ones from my friends. I threw the radio down, trying to smash it. Rambo pounced the moment it hit the ground. He chewed on that thing like he wanted to tear it apart. And then, just as suddenly as it had started, the music stopped. I couldn't hear anything outside either. I stepped out of the tent. I needed to check on Lonnie. The cold wind was like a slap in the face. I looked around and I saw footsteps around my tent. They overlapped one another, like someone walking in circles. And those prints, they weren't made with boots. They were bare feet, going round and round in the snow. I suited up and got my flashlight out. Whoever this was, we couldn't let him pick us off one by one. All three of us needed to stick together. We'd sleep in shifts if we had to. Andre's tent was the closest to me. I started to walk over Rambo, following close behind. I was halfway there when I saw movement in the corner of my eye. I looked around and I saw a glowing red light coming from the trees. It almost looked like a flare. Was that the person playing the flute? Was it actually some sort of distress signal? But as I watched, the light suddenly shot up. But instead of flying up like a normal flare, it stopped just above the trees. It hung in the air like it was dangling from a string, but I couldn't see anything it could be attached to. And then a second red light floated. It came from deeper in the forest, and then a third and a fourth. More and more red orbs appeared, and they all stayed just above the tree line. It looked like the whole forest was covered in Christmas lights, and that all at once they just zoomed across the sky. The lights danced over my head in a strange pattern, and they moved faster and faster. As I watched them, I started feeling sick, but I couldn't tear my eyes away. Before I knew it, the flute music had started up again. They seemed to dance to this song. The music got faster, and the lights started pulsing. I could feel something wet dripping from my nose, and then Rambo bit me. The pain snapped me out of it. I buried my face in his fur to block everything else out. Good boy, Rambo, I said. And then the song just stopped. I looked up and the lights were gone. The campsite was as quiet as before. How the hell could Lonnie and Andre ignore all that? Why couldn't they hear the song? I know I didn't imagine all that. Because Rambo reacted to everything like I did, but I needed to be sure. And then Rambo growled low in his throat. He barked at Andre's tent and tried to steer me away. I saw the side of it bulge outwards, like someone fell against it. Then I heard muffled shouting. The tent shook like Andre was fighting to get out. I ran over, and I heard a second voice coming from inside. There was Andre swearing, and the second voice laughed and said something back. I pulled at the zipper, trying to help him, but it wouldn't move. Then a woman's voice rang out. The tent bulged out again as Andre pushed through the fabric. I took out my knife to cut the tent open, but I couldn't slice through it. The knife slid over the fabric like it was made of wood. I pressed the tip to my palm, and it cut me easily, but every time I tried it on the tent, nothing happened. I could hear more voices inside now, all speaking over one another. The voices were a mix of men and women, and for a second I thought I even heard a child. Andre, it's me, Nick. I'm outside. I'm trying to get you out, I said all at once. The voices stopped. The tent stopped shaking. Nick, the one with the dog. Yes, Andre said. His voice was weak. Yeah, man, we're both out here. Me and Rambo. We're going to get you out. I said, Nick, they don't like your dog, he replied. Suddenly, the tip of a knife pierced through the fabric. It cut through the tent easily. Andre pushed himself through the tears. His hair was a mess, and he didn't have a shirt on. His body was covered in fresh cuts. His face was a mess of bruises. His eyes locked on Rambo. I wasn't ready. He grabbed me. We landed on the snow, and he swung his knife. And that's when I heard him. He was humming, and it was the same melody that the flute had played. I grabbed his wrist before he could take another shot at me. He hummed louder, his eyes bulging out. He grabbed my neck with his other hand. And then Rambo's jaws clamped on his arm. The dog shook his head, tearing it off my neck. But Andre didn't even seem to notice. He continued to hum that song. He managed to throw me off him, but Rambo still held on. There was blood in the snow. I made a grab for the knife. I was not going to let him hurt my dog. And then out of nowhere, Lonnie knocked him out. Andre crumpled to the ground. Lonnie stood over him, a rock in his hand. What the hell happened here, Nick? Woke up from all the noise when I looked out. It's like WrestleMania out here, he said. How long have you been asleep for, Lonnie? I asked. I don't know. Think we turned in at 7. He replied. You didn't answer your radio when I called. I insisted. Lonnie shook his head, looking confused. Look, Lonnie, I don't know what the hell's going on, right? But something's messing with us out here. It's screwing with our radios. Look, there's footsteps all over our camp. Our tour guide almost killed my dog. We got to be careful, man, I explained. Together, we dragged Andre to the middle of camp. While Lonnie tied his legs together, I want to get him a shirt and coat. He tried to kill me, sure, but that didn't mean I wanted him to freeze out here. The inside of his tent was a mess. His stuff was scattered everywhere. He'd opened up all his food packs and smeared everything on the floor. His radio was smashed open. I found him a shirt that wasn't covered in gravy. Next to his sleeping bag was his coat. Then I got back just in time. Andre looked like he was about to wake up. We dressed him quickly, but the arm that Rambo had clamped on was a bloody mess. It was so mangled I could see bone. All we could do was loop the rope around him and tie him to the sled. Andre's chest heaved. He was breathing fast. Now he opened his eyes and they darted around until he saw Rambo. That set him off again. He struggled against ropes. His ruined arm flopped against his side, and then he began to sing. I didn't understand the words, but they sounded angry, and the melody was still that same flute song that started all this. Lonnie took off his cap and used it to gag Andre. Lonnie suggested that we should take turns watching Andre. I nodded. That made sense. I looked at my watch just a bit past midnight. We agreed on 2-hour shifts until we left at dawn. Lonnie volunteered to take the first watch. He thought taking Rambo away would calm Andre down, enough for him to bandage up his arm. I looked back down at our tour guide. He kept singing, even with the gag in, but something had changed about his face. He wasn't angry anymore. Instead, he looked downright terrified. Lonnie just shrugged and got the fire going. I headed back to my tent. Rambo followed me. I got into my sleeping bag, but he stayed by the tent flap, ears up. I tried to get some sleep, but I couldn't forget the look in Andre's eyes when he looked at Rambo. I have never seen that much hatred on someone's face before, but I was not going to let anything happen to my boy. I must have dozed off after all, because I woke up to Rambo licking my face, and I could hear a faint rustling coming from outside. Rambo's ears were twitching too. With a deep breath, I grabbed my flashlight and I put a coat on. The moon shone brightly. The fire Lonnie started was out in the campsite. It looked completely deserted. Andre and Lonnie were both gone. I swept my light around, trying to figure out what happened. Multiple footprints covered the ground, all different sizes. Some of them showed bare feet walking around, others were boot prints, and a few of them were tiny, like the size of small children. There were some that looked like hands, as if someone was walking around on all fours, and some of them I didn't even recognize. I walked over to the sled where we'd put Andre, and there was nothing but bloody pieces of rope. A trail of blood led from the sled to the nearby woods. So that was Andre. But where was Lonnie? I called out his name, but no one answered back. I have no choice. I'll have to go after the tour guide and see if Lonnie's with him. I followed the blood through the snow. I saw there was only one pair of prints leading to the trees, but I didn't know whose they were. Rambo sniffed at the trail. He barked at me once, and then he stared directly at the trees. That's a good sign, at least. Whoever was over there, Rambo knew him. We followed the prints. The blood splotches didn't stop. The prints was harder to follow once we got into the trees, but Rambo knew exactly where to go. The forest seemed to close in around us as we moved. I stopped every time the wind whistled through the trees. It sounded too much like the flute. And bad things seemed to happen when I heard that. Finally, we ended up in a clearing, and in the middle was Lonnie. He was burying Andre in the snow. "Lonnie, what happened?" I called out. My friend turned to me, his face pale. "Oh, he came at me, Nick. I had to defend myself," he said. I could barely hear him over the wind. His words came out weak and uneven, and in his pocket I could see Andre's knife. I stared at Lonnie. His eyes looked glazed over, like he was sleepwalking or about to have a stroke. My mind raced as I tried to piece together what had happened. "Why is the compass in his mouth, Lonnie?" I asked. He'd already managed to bury Andre up to his shoulders. I could see the Russian's face clearly. His eyes were open and bloodshot. His nose was broken, and his lucky compass had been shoved into his mouth. Lonnie just shrugged, a quick, jerky motion that didn't sit right with me. He was raving, man. Said it was guiding him or something. "I don't know, Nick. It happened so fast," he said. Rambo started to grow. His body stiffened as he stared at Lonnie. He sensed something. Rambo. He'd always been a good judge of character. The dog always knew who the bad guys were. I took a step back, my eyes darting between Lonnie and the knife. How'd he get out of the ropes? I asked. Lonnie's eyes twitched. He looked around the clearing like he was looking at people only he could see. "Oh, I don't know, Nick. He just snapped, man. Started screaming about the compass. He tried to kill me." Lonnie said. He seemed different. My cop instincts were going crazy. "Okay, but I still don't understand about the compass." I pressed him. Lonnie's face hardened, his jaw clenched as he stared at me. "You weren't there, Nick. You're sleeping. You forget that you were asleep and I was doing the job. You didn't see what he was like." Okay, Rambo's growling intensified. He bared his teeth. Now he moved between me and Lonnie. Okay, let's just calm down, all right? I said slowly. "We can figure all this out in the morning, okay? Let's just head back to camp." Lonnie didn't talk as we made our way back, but his movements were jerky, uneven. I kept an eye on him. Rambo stayed behind him. He stayed between me and Lonnie the whole way back. But when we got to camp, it was like a tornado had gone through. The food was everywhere. Our tents were shredded. The snowmobiles were down on their sides, and weirdest of all, the snow around our tents had turned black. I knelt down and grabbed a handful. It felt like ashes. Then behind me, I heard Rambo bark. I turned around just in time to see him pounce at Lonnie. He snapped his jaws, pushing my friend into the snow, and I saw the knife glint in Lonnie's hand. "Nick, get him off. Get your dog off," he said, not sounding like himself. Rambo got his teeth around Lonnie's wrist. With one strong jerk, he ripped his arm away. My dog let out a whine, and in one quick motion, Lonnie got to his feet and just ran back to the trees. Rambo tried to follow, but I grabbed his collar just in time. I pulled him back as he barked furiously into the darkness. I couldn't calm him down. His fur was all puffed up. He was panting hard and blood dripped from his muzzle. His eyes remained fixed where Lonnie had run. We stood there for a minute. The cold bit into my skin. It took a while for both of us to calm down, and I looked around the wrecked campsite. If we were going to survive this night, we needed shelter. I picked through the wreckage for something we could use, and then the flute music started again, soft and close, and this time there were voices with it. They sang words I didn't understand. The voices overlapped. They formed perfect harmonies that made my ears hurt. I turned in a circle, trying to locate the source, but the song seemed to be coming from everywhere. Rambo started growling again as he just stared out into the trees. I walked towards the campsite. I didn't even realize I was doing it. I felt like I wasn't in full control of myself. Then I had the sudden urge to look down, and I saw the ashes. They were moving. They formed tiny mounds over the snow. Then as I watched, the mounds spread out. They formed lines that connected to one another, until I was looking at a large, complicated pattern in the snow. It circled around a burnout campsite, and then the lines spread out to each of the tents. Looking at it made my head spin. None of this was possible. The more I tried to understand it all, the dizzier I got. A strong wave of nausea hit me, and I fell on my knees. I swiped my hand over the ashes. I wanted to, to erase them, but they stayed in place. I brushed my fingers over them again and again, but the pattern wouldn't go away. Then the ground began to vibrate. It was subtle at first. I almost thought it was vertigo. It was the ashes. They shivered too. Not enough to erase the pattern, but it was there. The ground I was on began to change, and I didn't feel like I could move. I began to sink into the snow. My brain screamed at me to move, but all I could manage was to make a small twitch. I looked around the camp. I remembered the stories about the original Dyatlov incident. I wondered if those hikers heard the music too. Did the song infect them? Then in the distance I saw them. Figures, and they were walking towards me. Some of them looked like hikers, but others were half naked. There were children with them too. For a second, I thought I saw Andre with them, his forearm barely attached to his elbow. And Rambo, I couldn't see him anymore. I called out for him. I could hear him, but I couldn't see him. I didn't think I could trust my eyes anymore. I didn't know what was real or not. In the background, the song grew louder, and I realized that the singing was coming from the figures walking towards camp. I could see some of them more clearly now. The figure with a torn-up arm was the nearest to me. In its mouth was something shiny, the silver compass. And yet he still tried to mumble the words to the song, his dead eyes locked with mine. Get up, I told myself, but my limbs refused to move. I was sinking deeper now. Either the snow would get me, or the dead would. I understood something then. The song, that song, that had always lived here. And there are many ways it can take you. Andre was right in front of me now. He reached out towards my face. He grabbed my cheek and pressed down. His nails dug into my flesh. I wanted to scream in pain, but I couldn't. I knew I was going to die, and there was nothing I could do. And then I saw Rambo. Rambo jumped at Andre, forcing him to the ground. I didn't see what he did. All I heard was a deep growling and a vicious tearing sound. The music grew louder. It almost sounded like a howl now, and Rambo answered back with a howl of his own. I heard footsteps running behind me, but Rambo was quick. He leapt behind me, and I heard Lonnie scream. I still couldn't move, but I felt like maybe I was slowly coming back. I flexed my hand, and I tried to push myself up. Behind me, I could hear Rambo and Lonnie struggling in the snow. I heard barks, growls, and screaming. It went on for a long time, and then I felt something wet against my back. That was what did it. All of a sudden, I could move again. I grabbed a rock, pulled myself up, and I turned around. Rambo was alive, standing over Lonnie. He was panting hard, and he looked like he had a bad limp. But as soon as he saw my face, he jumped into my arms. A few hours later, he was snoring away in the sled. I put a splint on his leg, and I made sure he was nice and comfortable back there. We were going to be back in town in a couple hours. But as I drove, I couldn't help but wonder, did those villagers know what was out there? Did they even believe we'd make it back? Or were we chosen to die? In my younger days, I was a park ranger deployed in a remote stretch of woods. I worked perimeter patrols and wildlife management for nearly 10 years. I loved my job. I loved being outside alone a majority of the time out in nature. The career path was ideal for an introverted guy like me. I quit because of something that happened to me out there. Something I haven't felt comfortable enough to talk about for a long time. And the entire damn saga started with those dead wolves. I can't distinctly remember the day we found them. It was snowing. I was on my way to a checkpoint to make a repair. I stopped about 2 miles from the main base cabin when my walkie bust. Matt? Yeah, you might want to get back here. My partner for the day was a kid named Susan. She was 20 years old at the time, in college, working weekends to help pay for the books. I like Sue. We formed sort of a sibling relationship in our short period working together. I definitely felt responsible for her. Call that what you will. On my way, the trip back to base took me past a steep hill and ravine. I turned my ankle and caught some thorns, so a 30-minute hike took 40. I hobbled up the main path and caught my partner a few feet from the doorway to our cabin. She was staring down into a ravine. Are you all right? I asked. Hello? No, she whimpered. What? I followed the direction of her outstretched arm. There they were, 3 adult gray wolves, lined up in a row, deader than the leaves. Their eyes were open. Their mouths gaped. Their fur drifted in the wind, but they didn't move. Who put them there? Susan asked. Did you? No. Is it hunting season? No, I snapped. And you can't hunt wolves here. We hopped down the ravine and examined the carcasses. Decomposition only partially obscured the bodies. They hadn't been dead long. I looked for bullet holes and found none. I felt for cuts and came up empty. Their eyes watched me the entire time. The deep shades of orange and yellow and green looked so beautiful, even in death. I keep feeling like one of them's gonna jump on me and bite me, Susan squeaked. They just don't look dead. Look at those teeth. Where's the blood? I wondered out loud. There should be some in the snow. Maybe they were poisoned, Susan replied. Maybe, but we should still see something. I examined the mouse. They appeared malnourished. That would not be out of place in a modern world with shrinking habitats. I gestured for help, and we rolled over each of the bodies. I dug deeper and performed a thorough check. Not a single wound. Nothing. Susan stared back at me. I hated this part, being the senior, the old head, the one who makes decisions. I didn't know what the hell to do with him. I knew we had clear evidence of illegal poaching. The wolves didn't line themselves up, but the poachers didn't take anything. They didn't shoot anything. They just left them here. I also knew we had about an hour until the next wave of snow hit the area. Maybe they knew that too. All right, let's get the tarp. Susan grabbed a large black piece of canvas. We covered the animals and buried the ends in the ground to shield them from the wind. By the time we finished, the sprinkles overhead turned into an onslaught, and my feet had begun to freeze. All right, let's get inside. We hustled for the cabin. Rain, snow, or shine, somebody had to be up on that mountain. But we had a game plan for storms like these. We suspended patrols. Sue downloaded a bunch of her favorite shows. I dug into my reading list. The night could actually be quite cozy if all went right. Of course, that night, nothing went right. We locked up around daybreak. The storm escalated from there onwards. I stepped outside every now and again to track the snowfall. We tallied 3 feet by midnight. I turned the pages on my favorite novel. Sue snored and I drifted to sleep for an hour, maybe more. We woke up to a vicious pounding on the door. 3 a.m. I got to my feet. Sue stirred. I checked my alerts, but nobody called us. The pounding erupted once more before it quickly receded. Footsteps retreated down the steps. We waited. Should we answer? Sue asked. I guess. Maybe they need help. It seems like a weird way to ask. I opened the door. I didn't see it at first. Nothing appeared out of the ordinary. Snow caked up in the distance. Trees cracked and swayed. I smelled something burning, and then Sue screamed. In seconds, my entire world flipped upside down. Flames danced from the bathroom. Smoke billowed out from the roof. The entire cabin was on fire. We darted out of the house and dove forward just as a massive wooden crossbeam collapsed behind our heads. We reached a safe distance and collapsed on the path. He did this, Susan spat. That asshole who? I replied. The guy who killed the wolves. How do you know? She pointed. An empty gas canister sat an inch from the burning remains of our porch. Now what? We watched the cabin burn down in silence. I pulled out my walkie. Thank God I still had it and radioed for help. Dispatch said it would be hours to get through the storm. We expected as much, but we didn't have any weapons. We didn't have any shelter. We were sitting ducks for whatever this psychopath planned next. Once the fire felt safe enough to examine, I got up and I found a post-it note tacked to a tree. This is what it said. 3 white wolves died in the snow. 3 white wolves, all in a row. Catch him, and don't let him go. 3 witchy women, dead in the snow. 3 witchy women, all in a row. Catch him, and don't let him go. In some parts of the woods, the difference between life and death is often just 4 well-built walls. That's it. A front door and a lock is all that separates you from pale death and a puckard, but there's a lot of ways it can happen. Most people blame animals, but the cold is a more likely murderer. When you can feel the freeze on the other side of your skin, when you can't cough it out of your lungs, you'll know that's about halfway there. That's when you remember the importance of those 4 walls. That's when you enthusiastically cuss the asshole out who burned him down. We didn't have food that morning. We didn't have fresh water within a mile. We didn't even have a reliable weapon outside of a pistol whose handle burned a hole into the snow burrows. Susan spent the better part of the morning fishing it out. I kept trying the radio. Hello, this is the ranger from the burned down cabin calling again. Can anybody get the hell down here? The first 2 or 3 conversations were hopeful. Dispatch claimed the storm should blow over by evening. We just needed to hunker down for a few more hours. Then they called back and said a chopper was damaged and that they wanted us to wait a day. After that, the radio died. We tried salvaging some gear from the fire. Sue found a jacket and some other clothing that managed to dodge the flames. I found a tin water bottle and a rusted Bowie knife. Everything else was torched or smoldering. I couldn't believe the awful luck. We need to get away from high ground. She chirped. We're sitting ducks out here. I thought about that for a long while before answering. I didn't love the idea of leaving the campsite. Without the radio, we had no way to contact the rescue crews who expected us to be in that spot. But the point about cover did have some merit. The Park Service cut and maintained a 30-foot diameter around the cabin. That meant no trees, brush, or foliage of any kind. Anybody could be looking at us from virtually any direction. I could feel unseen eyes from every angle. All right, I can see it. Let's go. Not far. We took the path down a familiar ravine, which led to a nearby hot spring. The snow, which had mercifully relented in the hours of the fire, returned in full force to peck at us along the way. We stopped every quarter mile to adjust clothing and cover body parts from the wind. Our feet sunk deeper and deeper into the fresh covering. Soon enough, the walk turned into a shuffle. I can't do this, Sue moaned after the 3rd or 4th stop. I don't want to die out here. I think the only thing that kept me going was the hope of that hot spring. I didn't have much faith in the rescue team. I didn't have much faith in myself. I guess I just figured if this guy's going to kill me, maybe he'll at least allow me one last moment of warmth. We're almost there, I said. We tried to pick up the pace, and Susan fell down a hill. I rushed to help and face-planted myself. It would have been funny at a ski slope, maybe with an added Benny Hill soundtrack to boot. But that afternoon, the fall took everything we had left. Twigs and branches smacked my face on the way down. Sticker bushes pricked and ripped away at my already tattered pants. I rolled end over end for what felt like an eternity. The tumble stopped abruptly at a tree stump, which cracked a rib in the process. I sat up and looked around. The spring sat an inch from my crooked nose. I entered the water face first. The warmth of it sent a rush of blood that arced painfully and then pleasantly down my spine. I dove in deeper and let the water reach into my mouth, into my cold lungs, driving out the freeze that nestled into every inch of my insides. I surfaced and choked out Aranu as sensation coursed through my arms and my legs and my toes and my fingers. All of it felt so good. I felt more alive than ever before. I looked around again. Susan was gone. I splashed through the spring frantically. I dove to the bottom and fell along the rocks. Moments later, I saw her motionless body lying on the shore. I rushed over and carried her into the spring. She didn't respond at first. At first, she didn't even breathe. She just seemed so cold, like all the warmth in the world couldn't bring life back home. But then she coughed. Her chest rattled. She opened her eyes, pale blue ones, that radiated in the reflection of the sun on the water. She smiled at me, and then she screamed. It took me a minute to inject the fresh shock. I turned around and saw it. Two big bodies floated in the spring about 3 feet away. A gentle breeze pushed them our way. Susan hopped out of my arms and pulled a gun out of an unknown pocket. She shot one of them. Fat and tissue erupted into the air. I fumbled around for my knife. "What the hell are you doing?" I snapped. "He'll hear you." She fired again. "He knows," she retorted. "Don't you get it? He knows. He knew we would come to the spring after the cabin burned down. He knew we'd get in the water. He put those bodies in there on purpose. To mess with us. 2 witchy women. Don't you see it? He's playing a game. He's playing with us before he kills us like animals. 3 witchy women." I corrected it. 3 witchy women. The letter said 3. You said 2. Okay, so who are they? She replied, "Who are these 2? We examined the bodies as best we could. The stink was overwhelming. Bloat set in. I recognized outfits common for girls my age. An obnoxious tattoo with a heart on one arm gave a birth year. 1993. We saw a lot of thrill seekers who like to camp out on the higher points of the mountain, but those folks were usually more prepared looking than these 2. We can't stay in the water forever," Susan insisted after a point. "How far is that reserve cabin?" We kept a secondary cabin in the area for emergencies, such as this one. It wasn't anything special outside the aforementioned 4 walls, but it was our best shot at finding some shelter. "Too far," I responded. "I don't think we'll make it by nightfall." "We have to try," Susan replied. I thought about it again before answering. It was true that we couldn't stay in the water for the same reason. We couldn't stay by the cabin. It was known to the killer. We needed somewhere random. We needed somewhere secure. We needed a good hiding place, but none of that existed at the time. So we decided to keep moving. We took the path that led to Reserve Cabin A. The snow cracked, crunched, and melted. Under our freshly heated boots, we made progress during the first leg of the journey. We stopped when a mother grizzly and her 2 cubs happened across the path. I kept still and prayed that my partner remembered to do the same. The bears approached and got to about 10 feet apart. The mother sniffed the air. The cubs rolled around gleefully. I envied them. We kept our heads down. The family eventually moved on. So did we. We picked up the pace and made it about halfway through the journey by nightfall. Susan wanted to keep going. I wanted to scale a tree. We argued about that for a little bit. I couldn't understand why she wanted to travel in the dark. You're completely blind out there, I insisted. Animals, killers, not to mention the cold. You're just as vulnerable to that as me, she snapped, especially sitting still. The trees give us some cover, I replied. The sun fell sometime during that discussion. A pack of wolves started howling nearby. Susan took that opportunity to hop up the tree. What if he has a chainsaw? She asked while we got settled. He'd knock us right over. Who carries around a chainsaw in the woods? I laughed. It's kinda inefficient. You know who. I guess. What do you think he wants? Maybe he's protecting the woods. From what? I asked. I don't know. From us, she muttered. People. People are awful. Look at all the shit we've seen them do here. Fires, pollution, gender reveal parties. I thought about it. Doesn't seem like the right way to go about it, I said. He started a fire himself to get rid of us and the women. Who knows what they did? He killed them, she replied. We don't know that. Maybe they were already dead. We sat in silence for a bit. We're probably going to die out here, she said. I nodded. Yeah, probably, she sniffed. But, there's worse places to die than in the woods. With you. That caught me off guard. Thanks, I replied. Don't mention it. I'm almost twice your age, Please stop. Happy to, I replied. We fell asleep like that, laughing dumbly, arguing over our survival chances against a killer whilst 20 feet in the air hiding from one. I woke up a little while after, and she was snoring on my shoulder. I woke up again, and she was gone. It was daylight. I climbed down the rings of a tree and re-entered the forest. The prior night's snow had turned into melt, which made many streams at every hill and slight incline along the way. The rushing water obscured most sound. I listened closely and heard footsteps. Somebody was running. I shouted into the morning stillness and let the birds scatter. Then I started to run, too. I didn't know where to go. I didn't even think about it. Then I found a hill. I ran to the top and looked out into the woods about 50 feet below. I saw a flash of red, the jacket from the fire. Susan's jacket. She stopped. She turned a corner abruptly and fell down into the snow. She made a horrible sound as she tried to get up. She screamed and cried and begged. I wanted to help. I wanted to save her more than anything in the world. But then I saw him. He slipped out from the tree line as easily as the tide. He didn't stop. He didn't slow down. He had a horned mask over his head and a machete in his left hand. Susan shouted, right until the moment he took that knife and stuck it in her head. It stayed pinned there like an axe in wood. Then he looked at me. I waited in dumbfounded shock as the man dragged Susan's dead body up the base of a hill. He left it there. He stared for a second. Then he raised one hand. Two from the creek. Plus one. Susan. That makes 3. Then he pointed at me. I ran. It's one thing to be alone in the woods with a plan. It's another to be lost. A lot of soon-to-be dead people don't get the difference between the two. Either that, or they just realize it too late. The tallest mountains and the deepest caves are full of assholes who thought they could do something when they couldn't. I've seen the aftermath myself, bodies frozen in position, naked from the waist down, eyes still open and staring off into the distance like they'd just seen a friend from work. I didn't want to be one of them, just another pair of bright pants for the hikers to spot. And so I couldn't save the girl. I could barely save myself. I ran from a killer as fast as the snowbanks allowed. I didn't stop until I reached the burned-down remains of the ranger cabin. A familiar log by the aforementioned ravine with 3 dead wolves felt like home. I collapsed into the bark like a lazy boy as a thin trail of smoke receded into the early morning sky. It was raining. The lonely patter mixed in with the cracks and groans of the forest. I tried to forget, if only for a second. But that didn't work. I kept picturing Sue's face when she saw the animals. The conversation ran over and over again in my head. There was something that went unsaid. I just couldn't place it. Part of me wanted to quit just then. A large part was angry. I got up and sifted through the cooled remains of a cabin fire. I found a charred stick used to turn on an inexplicably highlight switch on the wall and attached it to my knife like a bayonet. I swung into the air to test my weapon on a would-be attacker. The apparatus collapsed. Great. The sun slowly but surely rose in the distance. I guessed the time to be a little before 6, maybe later. I figured I had a couple hours before the first rescue crews arrived from the valley. Someone should have seen the smoke by now. It wouldn't be long. I still refused to be a sitting duck, primed for murder, so I headed down to the tree line in search of better weapons. Melted snow clung like butter. It took a while to maneuver. I found a larger branch and set about hollowing a hole for the knife. I wrapped the blade tight with strands of bark and roots. I swung it 3 times. This time it held. I moved on in search of a better tree to scale. My reasoning for climbing was not just that I was good at it. It was great, but the high positioning and downward slope of the path made it possible to see much further ahead than on the ground. After a good hour of searching, I found my target. Another massive oak with low-hanging branches leveled all the way to the top. I hopped one at a time and made it around 3/4 of the way up. I could see the hot spring. I could see my own path of footprints. But that was about it. A strange but familiar sound echoed in the distance. The minutes turned into hours. I waited. My plan was pretty simple. If the masked man went this way, I would ambush him. If the good guys arrived, I couldn't miss him. Time dragged. Every passing glow of sunlight looked like a plane. Every rustle of leaves brought up the stick blade. I waited and waited some more. Then it happened. 3 hours after my initial descent, something large moved through the woods, big enough to be a person. I crouched behind some leaf covering. I kept still. Footsteps approached 20 yards away. Somebody was whistling. I didn't recognize the song at first. The high notes were wistful and the low notes foreboding, almost like it might sound better on a flute. I sat there on the branch like a dumbass desperately trying to place the tune. It took me 20 years to realize it was Dixie. I moved to adjust my footing. Something broke. I hit the branch below and snapped it upward. I tried to steady myself and flipped. The stick blade lacerated my leg and caused blood to spill so fast that some of it fell into my mouth on the way down. I must have mashed 10 more branches before the last one left me to the ground. The next few moments were kind of blurry. I remember feeling for the blood. I remember trying to walk. I couldn't. I crawled off into some shrubbery and looked for something to stop the bleeding. I didn't find it. Then the lights went out. More whistling. The sound of metal connecting with dirt is very distinct up close, but from miles away, it could be anything. At that moment, I recognized it immediately. Okay, he's digging my grave. Time to pray, please, I mumbled. Are you awake? He answered. I couldn't see the owner of the voice in front of me. I blinked a dozen times. I felt around blindly, and my fingers brushed a piece of cloth and knot. He took the time to give me a tourniquet. I opened my eyes again and looked dead into an elaborate horn mask. What the hell? I fought with all my might. I got up and darted backwards, slamming into a tree and loosening the tourniquet in the process. No, what? What do you want with me? I screamed. You want to kill me? I'm not the bad guy. I stared at him. I know I look like the bad guy. He chuckled and removed the mask. This is just for prediction. I'm Zach. I saved your life, my friend. I nodded slowly. He looked normal enough. Long black hair, clean shaven. I couldn't quite place the accent, but my ear for that sort of thing is terrible. Look around you. I brushed the silt off my eyes and sat back down. Zach knelt beside me and readjusted the dressing. Blood oozed out spectacularly, so it helped to take my mind off the wound. Look at all the graves, he mumbled. Look at the ratting. I examined them one by one. Most were single names. Otis, John, Dipper. There must have been thousands of headstones in that one little alcove, jutted purposefully above the snow. Some dated back to the early 1800s. Okay, I muttered. Dead people. So, Zach shook his head. No people. I leaned down and brushed some snow to get a better look. There were drawings underneath. Jack the Mountain Lion. I moved on to another. Marcello the Wolf. Zach grunted. I got a little baby squirrel over there. I was dumbfounded. Why? Zach smiled. She really liked these animals. It didn't make any sense to me. How long has this been here? How did we miss it? Zach grunted. We way outside patrols now, he offered. I stared at him. Who are you? He looked back at me for a little while. Something about his clean-kept features appeared trustworthy. He sighed. Your friend is a witch. I laughed. Zach didn't. I'm a logger. We're taking down this section of wood here. He gestured behind us, and I see them, these three girls, dancing in the woods with the wolves. These wolves are fine one moment, calm, docile, the like. It's very strange to see a big beast cozying up to a woman like that. Then they all fall dead. 1, 2, 3, just like that. First the wolves, then the girls like dominoes. I saw it happen, my friend. So somebody shot him. No. You see the bodies. No bullets. I will try to show you the wolves. I couldn't carry the two girls close enough. That was you. Yes. And the fire. I try to warn you, he explained. I nodded. Some warning. I see it. We could have died. Zach grabbed my arm and squeezed. Listen to me, that girl with you, she'd only want to get up when they fall. The rest of them stay dead. But that girl gets up and walks down to your cabin like it's a Monday. He looked scared. She is a witch. Through and through, my best guess, she sacrificed them. The wolves and the other girls. She sacrificed them for the woods to keep me out. I laughed again. Susan. He nodded. If you called her that, he mumbled. I want to know why, so when I come down here and see the graves, she remembers them, all of them. Every little animal, every bunny she finds. How do you think she feels about me? About the people who take the trees and the homes of bunnies? He whimpered a bit. I struggled to believe a word of it. We stood awkwardly for a moment. Zach disappeared into the brush. He returned a couple moments later with the motionless corpse of my coworker. I cut off the head of the witch. I vomited. Oh, I'm sorry, but I have experience on this. Local experience. You gotta trust me. There's a very bad girl. A very, very bad girl. Zach pushed back Sue's hair. I could see her picture in an old book. A very old 100-year-old book, but she is young like this, he continued. How she stays young like this. The noises of the woods appeared to grow louder. I stared blankly into Susan's lifelessly pretty eyes. I thought about our conversation only a couple days prior. He knows. Okay, I still didn't believe the story, not a word of it, as you probably don't. I knew we were destroying evidence. I knew this guy could be a D-bad guy, and all of his plans could just be a ruse to let my guard down before the rescue crews arrived. But I thought I'd play the little game. I thought I'd bury poor Sue's head so that I could always retrieve it later and use the newfound trust to mount my revenge. That was my plan, just as you might expect. Right until the moment she blinked. That's right, the head blinked. I thought it was a trick until Zach saw it too. He screamed. Oh, he grabbed the mask. Sorry, no good explanation for that yet. And set it on his face before he took off into the woods. Susan's eyes strained and looked around after him. Then they found me. Her lips smiled. Fresh blood dropped down from the gash in her forehead. She licked it. I watched in horror as the head dribbled along the ground, as if moving unimaginary legs towards the torso in the grass 5 feet away. I didn't wait for it to reattach. I ran to again, because that's what a real person does when faced with the inexplicable. Fight or fight might favor the bold when Granny is confronted by a mugger, but the instinct definitely does not cater to bouncing heads and human sacrifices. I ran until my legs couldn't carry me anymore. I ran through snow and sitting water. I ran up ravines and downhills and kept going after my legs screamed from the pressure. I ran into the God-blessed ambulance waiting at the charred remains of my cabin. I babbled this exact story to every medic and doctor and police officer who asked it of me. How do you think it went? The doctors gave me a bloated 4 and a battery of little white pills. The police hooked me up with an arson charge. I bounced from hospitals to psych wards to county jail. I lost touch with my limited family. My work friends excommunicated me. When I got out, I got a place by the beach away from the woods. I took up fishing. There's probably one detail you're wondering about. If you're still with me, and it's the same one that's extended my stay in Valley General, where are they? I used to ask anyone who would listen. What the hell happened to Susan? What happened to Zach? What happened to the women? I couldn't understand why they weren't looking. Regardless of how they felt about my mental state, there were still missing people out there. 4 of them in total. Their loved ones should be concerned. They should be blaming somebody, probably me, for their deaths, but nobody cared. One night, a detective visited me in jail. He didn't have any reason to lie, I guess. The case was over. The state won. He told me that his office didn't have any records for a girl named Susan at the Parks Department. There also weren't any local logging companies with current bids, but they did have one 20 years back where a guy went missing on the job. The detective told me about it. Yeah, it was a foreign guy. Strange accent. They didn't have good paperwork on him. Went out into the woods one day and never came back. I talked to the manager, the guy's still alive, and they say his name was Zach. He hesitated. I'm not saying I believe this shit, but I've lived in White Valley long enough to know about the witch. If you really say you really saw her, well, I'll tell the judge to go easy, he said. And he did. You work in a secret SCP prison, and you're given a strange list of rules to follow. Do you burn the list of rules and just do things your way? B, follow the rules exactly, and hope you don't die. Or C, leave the prison before something horrible happens. Here's the story. Leaked email from jirichi.gov.uk to SC all staff. Alright lads, pay attention because this is the last time you're going to be told inmate number 514233 is not a novelty. She is a permanent resident of this facility. I know you all thought it was funny that we have a harmless looking female inmate in a men's prison, but we're the only building with the facilities required to safely hold her. I do not give a shit how stupid you find the new protocols. You will follow them, or you will end up like Carrie. These aren't guidelines. These aren't suggestions. Consider the new protocols, commandments carved in stone by Moses himself. I'm not even close to joking. If for some crazy reason you're still unsure of why we're doing all this, the governor will let you access her file. By all means, go and reread it so you can be reminded of exactly what she did to deserve this. Failure to adhere to any of the new rules is grounds for immediate termination of employment and potential criminal prosecution. This is not a threat. The next person that makes a mess of this, I swear, I will personally ensure that they are completely unemployable for the rest of their miserable life. The rules are posted in every guard station in Solitary, and they're going to be posted on her cell door. No more excuses. I'm attaching the updated rules to this email. Memorize them and follow them as if your life depends on it. Because from this moment forth, it damn well does. No more screw-ups. P.S. Gary's funeral is on Monday afternoon. The governor wants to have a short remembrance service on Tuesday with the chaplain. Attendance is optional. If it were up to me, I'd make you all go and re-watch the tape of what she did to him. Grant Ritchie, Chief Officer, email to the staff. Protocols relating to inmate 514,233 number 1. The inmate is to be held in cell 7 of the new solitary confinement block. If for any reason 514233 is required to go to another cell, she should be placed into a cell denoted by a prime number. No exceptions number 2. Under no circumstances are any prisoners to be held in the cells to either side or opposite her cell. If there's a shortage of room in the solitary confinement block, prisoners deemed as low risk can be moved to C block. If at any time a prisoner is discovered in a cell adjacent to 514,233, they are to be placed in full-body restraints and moved to treatment room for number 3. Inmate number 514233 is to be kept in her cell 24 hours a day unless a request is made by Dr. Roberts and Chaplain Reese to move her to a treatment room. Such requests must be made in person. Written or telephone requests are to be reported to the governor's office immediately. Furthermore, both the doctor and chaplain must be present at the time of request. If either comes alone to request her movement to a treatment area, ask them to wait for approval and immediately report to the governor. Number 4. When being moved to a treatment area, inmate 514233 is to be accompanied by DR. Roberts, Chaplain Reese, and no less than 4 armed guards. The escorting guards must only use ammunition provided by Chaplain Reese, and ideally should be active practitioners of one of the Abrahamic religions. Number 5. Prior to exiting her cell, 514233 must be fitted with a pair of silver-coated cuffs. These will be provided by the chaplain. If she refuses to put on the cuffs, activate the in-cell sprinkler system and wait patiently. She'll comply soon enough. Additionally, if the reason for her movement is deemed sufficiently urgent and she remains non-compliant, the song What a Friend We Have in Jesus can be played over the loudspeaker. This will severely agitate her, but she'll put the cuffs on much more quickly. Turn the song off immediately after she has the cuffs on, so as not to cause unnecessary behavioral issues. Number 6. Absolutely no living or freshly killed organic material, larger than bacteria, is allowed into 514,233 cells while she is in it. Meals must consist of meat, vegetables, and fruit that have been dead for 1 week at minimum and should not have been frozen. This inmate is never to be offered nuts or seeds. Meals are to be pushed under her door using a silver-tipped pole. 7. If she ever expresses a wish to kill herself, she is to be encouraged to do so. She can be provided with no more than 6 feet of rope to assist in this. No attempts to prevent 51-42-33 from harming herself are to be made. She is impervious to significant harm and cannot die. She is absolutely under no circumstances to be provided with books, paper, or any form of writing. Inmate number 514233 may attempt to write on her cell walls using her own blood or fecal matter. If you discover her doing this, do not attempt to read the writing. Activate the in-cell sprinkler system and require assistance from the Specialist Decontamination Crew, the SDC. Number 9. Cleaning of 514,233 cell can only occur when she is in a treatment area. The sprinkler system must be used for no less than 10 minutes prior to anyone entering the cell. SDC will carry out the cleaning. No one else is to enter the cell under any circumstances. Number 10. This inmate will attempt to persuade you to release her. She will tell you that one of your loved ones is in danger and that she can help. She can be extremely convincing, but you must remember that she's lying. You have no loved ones. You are handpicked for this assignment due to the fact you have no living family and are not married and have no children. Nevertheless, 514233 will attempt to place fictitious memories in your head. If she tries this, withdraw immediately and report to the chaplain's office. Update. Due to the circumstances surrounding 514,233's recent escape attempt, additional measures have had to be implemented to ensure the safety of all staff and prisoners at HMP. Number 11. Verbal communication with 514233 is henceforth forbidden under any circumstances. Industrial-grade ear protection will be provided for all guards. An additional soundproofing was installed in her cell during Saturday evening's treatment session. Ear protection must be worn by all staff during all interactions with the prisoner. Number 12. By royal decree of Her Majesty Elizabeth II, all matters relating to 514,233 are exempt from investigation by the Independent Monitoring Board, the IMB. Anyone claiming to be from IMB inquiring about 514233 is to be immediately detained. Any resistance should be met with reasonable force. Detainees should be placed in a solitary confinement room, which adheres to the protocols previously outlined. Number 13. In the event that 514,233 successfully escapes her cell, Emergency Lockdown Procedure 616 is to be enacted. Do not attempt to save colleagues or prisoners. Follow Emergency Lockdown Procedure 616 to the letter. Any severely wounded individuals, staff, or inmates who you encounter during 616 should be granted a merciful execution. Their remains should be turned over to SDC for disposal. If after 1 hour from the commencement of ELP 616, inmate 514233 has not been subdued, SDC will be authorized to purge the entire block. Do not let it come to that. Terminate her, collect her remains, and return them to her cell. Email from sovereignty@redacted.gov.uk to SC all staff. You've been tasked with an incredibly difficult job. Her Majesty and the Archbishop have faith that we can do this. I've handpicked you all because I believe you're up to the task. With that being said, I need you all to understand that you cannot continue to allow her appearance to cloud your judgment. Inmate number 514233 is not a little girl, no matter how much she resembles one. I too had my reservations, but I believe the tape of what she did to Gary McMichael speaks for itself. We all must recognize her for what she truly is, no matter how horrible that truth is. I will personally check in with the team as often as I can. Do not hesitate to come to me for additional support. The Crown is extending us every courtesy in this endeavor, and I intend for us to take full advantage of it. As always, you have my eternal gratitude. May God bless and protect each and every one of you. Stay safe. Yours sincerely, Sean K. O'Grady, Governor. Email from doherty@redacted.gov.uk to all staff. Hello, team. Following a successful trial at HMP, the National Offenders Management Service is instituting a new program for offender management, specifically the housing of certain inmates, previously deemed too difficult or dangerous to be considered for holding in a standard maximum security site. These prisoners must have previously been held in specialist psychiatric facilities, but the new initiative wants to integrate them into the general prison system. To prevent any further rumors circulating, I can now confirm that this is the reason for the refurbishment of the solitary confinement block. Solitary will now have its own dedicated team, selected from the existing staff roster. Members of this team will be handpicked by myself based on several suitability metrics. Additionally, a new janitorial team, which will be known as the Specialist Decontamination Group, is being brought in to cover all janitorial tasks in the solitary block. Individuals selected for reassignment to the new solitary team will be informed within the next week. Until then, keep up the good work. Incidents continue to decline weekly. Keep this up, and we're going to have the lowest incident rate in the whole of HMPS. Yours sincerely, Karen Doherty, Governor. Email from doherty@redacted.gov.uk. Hello, SC team. By now, I hope you've all had sufficient time to familiarize yourself with the new solitary block. David informed me that there's been some frustration and boredom among the SC team. Consider it a testament to the sterling work carried out by the faculty in this establishment, yourselves included. With that being said, I'm pleased to announce that I've had confirmation from Tower that inmate 00327 will be transferring to your block on Monday. By now, preparation of this cell should have been completed, and SDC have finished setting up their offices. David will brief you in full on the transfer procedure. For now, I've attached the specific protocols that will need to be implemented. Copies of these are to be posted in all guard stations throughout the solitary block, and on the advice of Governor O'Grady from HMP, a copy should be placed on inmate number 00327 cell door. It is imperative that these protocols are strictly adhered to. You've all been briefed on the incident at HMP. I do not want anything like that happening here. Be smart. Follow the rules. Be safe. Yours sincerely, Karen Doherty, Governor. Email to all staff. Protocols relating to inmate number 00327. Number 1, the inmate is to be housed in cell 9 of the solitary confinement block, never in any other cell. Inmate 00327 is not to be held in any room that has access to a window or an outside ventilation system. A special air filtration system has been installed in Cell 9. SDC will carry out regular maintenance on this system to ensure it is in working order. Number 2, the prisoner is to be provided with a vegan diet. Inmate number 00327 is never to be offered meat, eggs, or fresh milk. Some processed foods containing dairy such as chocolate and American-style cheese are allowed, as is the use of powdered creamer in tea and coffee. The prisoner's unique properties will affect all animal matter. This renders any animal-based foodstuff he comes into contact with inedible, even to him. Hashtag 3A choice of reading materials are to be offered daily. He particularly enjoys medical and scientific journals, autobiographies, classical philosophy, and celebrity gossip magazines. He is also to be provided with a small notepad and pencil. Inmate 00327 will often make notes in the medical science journals. Due to his unique knowledge of infectious diseases, any journals found with such notes should be passed directly to the governor for analysis. Under no circumstances is the prisoner to be provided with any religious materials. Under no circumstances is he to be provided with reading material containing images of vultures, condors, corvus, or any other carrion bird. Number 4, the prisoner is permitted to have written correspondence with inmate number 00001 once a month. Due to the length of both their incarcerations as well as certain shared interests, inmates 00327 and 00001 have built up a friendship of sorts. Allowing them to continue this relationship has been shown to reduce agitation and behavioral issues in both prisoners. All outgoing letters should be approved by Dr. Lancaster prior to delivery. Any letter written in a substance other than standard pencil graphite or in any language other than English are to be immediately destroyed. Incoming letters will be approved by the tower prior to receipt. Staff should never, under any circumstances, attempt to read a letter received from inmate 00001. Inmate 00327 is never to be allowed correspondence with any other inmate from the tower facility. Number 5, staff members and inmates with severe or chronic health conditions must never be allowed into the same block as inmate 00327. Individuals with severe health conditions who are in close proximity to this prisoner frequently suffer from sudden, drastic worsening of said conditions. Manageable conditions have been seen to become terminal in as little as 30 minutes of exposure to 00327's sphere of influence. The solitary confinement staff team was selected partly due to their excellent health. All team members will receive a full physical exam on a monthly basis to ensure compliance with this protocol. Number 6, inmate number 00327 is never to come in contact with animals. Under any circumstances, even something as innocuous as an ant, housefly, or a spider coming into contact with this prisoner could have catastrophic consequences. The airtight pressure-sealed door, coupled with the air filtration system, will prevent any pest from entering his cell during normal operations. SDC will sweep the block prior to any opening of the inmate's cell door, including meal times. Number 7, under no circumstances, allow your exposed skin to touch any part of the prisoner's body. During all interactions with 00327, staff should wear their specially assigned PPE. In instances where he is to be moved from his cell to the treatment area, the prisoner will wear a custom-fitted restraint suit. Due to his generally amiable nature, he's usually compliant in putting on his restraints prior to exiting his cell. If an instance arises where the prisoner's movement is deemed urgent and he is non-compliant, a CD of Raven calls is to be played over the loudspeaker. This should be stopped once he dons his restraint suit. If at any time a staff member or inmate comes into skin-to-skin contact with 00327, that individual is to be immediately detained and placed inside a windowless, sun-proofed cell in a solitary block. If by any means a staff member or inmate dies while inside HMP redactor, their remains are to be collected by SDC immediately for disposal. Inmate 00327 has been shown to possess the ability to sense or predict an individual's approaching death, even if he has never seen this person and is on the opposite end of the facility at the time. The precise range of the prisoner's sphere of influence is unknown and likely impossible to accurately measure. For this reason, every death on HMP grounds is to be treated as a potential reanimation incident. Emergency Lockdown Procedure 1347 should be enacted in the event of any potential reanimation incident. ELP 1347 is not to be lifted until SDC deems the facility secure. Number 9. Pregnant women should never be permitted to enter any facility housing 00327. See Incident Report TRK 9919 and the attached video file if you require further clarification on the reasoning for this protocol. Never become complacent around 00327. Despite his friendly demeanor, make no mistake, he is now the most dangerous individual to ever set foot inside your facility. He will do everything within his power to escape. He bears the scars of uncountable failed executions, and every one of them is warranted. Were he possible to kill, it would be deserved 100 times over. Governor Doherty has all of the files. Every one of his atrocities is painstakingly detailed in them. You are all expected to commit them to memory. Tower has kept him incarcerated for over 2 centuries. We have given you all the tools required to hold him for many more. Do not fail us. May God bless and protect you all. From D. Keen to K. Doherty. Hi, Karen. 2 quick questions. What the hell's the deal with these SDC guys? Have you spoken to them? Do they just sit around all day in those weird hazmat suits? They're creeping out the team. Can I throw anyone using the word necromancy into a hole? Other than that, 00327 seems to have settled in fine. The old bastard could talk the ears off a donkey. At least the boys aren't bored anymore. They've had the protocols drilled into them, though, so I'm confident we're going to make a success of this. Speak soon. David Keene, Solitary Confinement Team Leader. Email from K. Doherty to D. Keene. Hi, David. Glad to hear things are going well down there. Everything upstairs is going to shit. It's like he's put the fear into everyone just by being here. I should call Tower to see if there's anything they haven't told us. All of the SDC staff came from Tower. I'm not sure what's going on there, or why they're shipping the freak show out to the rest of us. The Crown Office just told us this was happening. No questions, no answers. We're not really meant to be discussing this anyway. Tower gets really pissy if you talk about him too much. It may be safer all around if you and I discuss your concerns about these matters in person from now on. Call me when you get off shift. Karen Doherty, Governor. Email from F. McNally to SC, all staff. Your new resident will be arriving from the Tower later this morning. I expect you all to have memorized the brief. I want this transition to go smoothly. The other prisons, housing, relocated, high-dependency inmates have been struggling with their assignments. I expect you to do better than they have. Leslie should have posted the new protocols downstairs by now. Do not phone me this morning. I'll be golfing with the Lord Provost. SDC is set up. Go to them with any problems till I get back. I'll be down this afternoon to get a look at the little lady for myself. Till then, do your jobs. I want noms to be kissing our asses at the next inspection. Frank McNally, Governor. Email to all staff. Protocols relating to inmate number 00001. Number 1. Inmate 1 is to be held in the specially constructed Cell 2 of the solitary confinement block. All metal components are constructed of iron, and iron threads are used to strengthen the concrete of her cell. Extensive soundproofing measures have also been included in the construction of the cell. In instances where prisoner 1's cell requires cleaning, she is to don full body restraints and be transferred directly from her cell to a specially constructed mobile iron cage. At least 2 guards armed with portable thermic lances should be present to ensure compliance. SDC will carry out the cleaning process number 2. She requires a live diet. 1 rabbit is to be provided to her daily. Any captured vermin may be offered to her as a reward for compliance. Number 3, inmate number 1 is permitted written correspondence with inmate 00327 once per month. Letters written by 1 are to be collected by SDC and sent to Tower for approval before delivery. Under no circumstances is 1 allowed any form of contact with any former Tower inmate other than 00327. Number 4. With exception of SDC Tower operatives, Absolutely no male staff are permitted to enter the solitary confinement block. Although capable of affecting females with her abilities, Prisoner One's known victims were exclusively male. She sees the presence of male staff as a challenge, and this increases the likelihood of escape attempts. Real-time surveillance of her cell must be carried out 24/7. Discrete audio/visual recording devices were placed into her cell during construction. She is to be watched at all times. Inmate may first seem to disappear from time to time. If this occurs, switch the camera mode to image intensification mode. She's invisible to infrared cameras. It is likely that she has taken an animal form in order to hide from view. Her preferred form is a black cat, but she's been known to take the form of a rat, a large dog, a horned goat, and a hooded crow. Most often, one will appear as a strikingly beautiful red-haired woman, sometimes with extensive Pictish tattoos. Her true form is more animalistic in nature. Number 6. All audio recordings are to be sent to Tower daily at 6 a.m. for analysis. Inmate 1 generally speaks Scots Gaelic. She's also fluent in English, Latin, Norwegian, and Pictish. Staff are to be trained to recognize these languages. If one begins to speak a language they do not recognize, staff are to immediately mute the live audio feed. While not as dangerous as hearing it spoken in person, the language is still capable of creating adverse psychological effects, such as severe anxiety and paranoia, to those exposed to it via recording equipment. Inmate 1 is one of a handful of known living creatures to still speak this language. She is never exposed to sunlight. This includes indirect exposure. It will allow her to enter an ethereal form, making imprisonment impossible. All previous successful escape attempts were possible because she was exposed to sunlight. For this reason, coupled with her other transformational abilities, one is never to be held in any area with access to windows or doors which can access the outside of the facility. Number 8. One is never to be held in the same facility as Inmate 0. Tower recently discovered that Zero's presence in their main facility amplifies the abilities of all high dependency inmates. This was especially true for Prisoner 1. It is theorized that 1 is the biological offspring of 0. However, since obtaining a DNA sample from 0 is impossible, this cannot be confirmed. For this reason, HMP Redacted was chosen to hold Prisoner 1, as this is the farthest establishment from Tower's main facility. Number 9. In the event that 1 becomes loose in the facility, staff must immediately enact Emergency Lockdown Procedure 1669 to ensure ELP 1669 success. All doors and windows leading into the solitary confinement block have been fitted with iron handles, hinges, and fixings. While not enough to stop Inmate 1 entirely, they will sufficiently slow her down so that SDC can intercept her with thermal weaponry. Number 10. If a successful method of termination is discovered, 1 is to be executed immediately. Tower believes that 0 knows the methods required to terminate all high dependency inmates. Tower is committed to extracting this information and is employing all means necessary in pursuit of this goal. Email from Tower to functionally@redacted.gov UK. Governor McNally transfer of Inmate 1 will commence in 1 hour. A Tower Command operative will accompany the prisoner. You are expected to greet them in your office to finalize the handover and take possession of her file. Inmate number 1 is our longest tenured prisoner. Her file is incredibly extensive, and much of it requires translation, complete preparation, and await our arrival. May God bless and protect you. Email from functionally@redacted.gov.uk to SC all staff. Why the hell didn't anyone phone me? I'll be back in 25 minutes, and I'm coming down to see the prisoner. I don't care who Tower or the Crown Office think they are. No one tells me where I'm allowed to go in my prison. Frank McNally, Governor. Email from Tower Command at redacted.gov.uk to Tower, all staff. Inmate 91188 has transferred successfully to HMP Redacted, and the project is now complete. You've all done your country a great service. While you will never receive the public respect and admiration that you deserve, know that Her Majesty and all of the Tower Command staff recognize your unparalleled dedication and professionalism. The recent events in this facility, those which prompted the relocation project, could not have been averted and were no fault of any member of the HDPU. Were it possible to keep all of the high dependency prisoners here, know that we would have done so. The information we received from the Vatican when we agreed to hold inmate Zero on their behalf made no mention of the effect she would have on the other high dependency prisoners. Whether this was a gross oversight or a deliberate attempt to sabotage this facility is still unclear. The possibility that they have allowed themselves to become compromised by her is not impossible. Command Operative Blake has been dispatched to Vatican City, so we should have an answer within the next 24 hours. Zero will be remaining in the tower's main facility. Nowhere else could possibly hold her. No other team could be trusted. Any information gathered by Blake will be disseminated to tower staff at the soonest possible opportunity. May God bless and protect us all. Email to all staff. Protocols relating to Inmate Zero. Number 1. Inmate Zero is to remain in her cell indefinitely. The cell has been reinforced to better withstand heat. Zero is not to be removed from her cell under any circumstances. Number 2. Zero must wear a bridle at all times. Zero is not permitted to speak. The psychological damage caused from exposure to the language of paradise is both catastrophic and irreversible. Allowing Zero to speak at any time puts the entire tower facility at risk. In the unlikely event that Zero's bridle becomes damaged, emergency lockdown procedure 5225 should be enacted. The OP 5225 is the one of 2 instances under which staff are permitted to enter Zero's cell. Number 30's cell should be maintained at 80 degrees Celsius under normal circumstances. If Zero becomes highly agitated, the temperature should be increased to a maximum of 1250 degrees Celsius. If Zero manages to remove her bridle, the temperature should be increased to 3422 degrees in accordance with ELP 5225. Such extreme temperatures will, unfortunately, not cause Zero long-term harm. Number 4. Zero is not to be fed. Zero's imprisonment is not simply the purpose of containment and study. As per our agreement with the Vatican, Tower will continue Zero's ongoing punishment. Zero is to assist in locating unusual individuals. Zero is responsible for the existence of all high dependency prisoners, either indirectly as a result of her historical actions, or directly through parentage. Zero is to be encouraged to write the names. So far, we've been able to extract around 2 names per week of these unusual individuals. Zero is rarely compliant in this, and will claim in writing that she does not know their names. This is a lie. Zero knows the names of all things. Once Zero has given us a name voluntarily, inmate number 01487 will locate them, and Tower or an affiliate organization will apprehend. Number 6. If Zero becomes pregnant, staff must immediately enact emergency lockdown procedure 661705. Zero's pregnancies are completely spontaneous, making prediction impossible. During ELP 661705, all offspring are to be immediately removed from Zero's cell and destroyed. Those who cannot be destroyed are to be placed into an extreme pressure containment unit and buried at the redacted Oceanic facility. In the past, several tower staff have experienced significant distress while carrying out ELP 661705. You must remember that all of her offspring are abominations, regardless of how human they appear. Affiliate organizations are never to be allowed access to Zero. There is a reason she was entrusted to us and not them. In agreement with the Vatican, our Norwegian affiliates are permitted access to her files, so they may prepare a backup facility in the event that Tower becomes compromised. Number 8. In the event that Zero escapes her cell, the catastrophic event procedure should be enacted. Following completion of CEP, Vatican operatives will take custody of Zero and transfer her to the Norwegian facility number 9. If Zero births a non-humanoid offspring, the apocalyptic event procedure should be enacted. Should AEP ever be enacted, all staff are advised to pray for forgiveness. Email from Tower Command at redacted.gov.uk to Tower all staff. Due to the actions of Governor McNally, now deceased, and HMP redacted, inmate 00001 has escaped. All staff are to be on maximum alert. I do not need to explain to you the consequences if she were to enter this facility. May God bless and protect us all. Email from Tower Automated at redacted.gov.uk. To Tower, all staff emergency lockdown procedure 661705 has been enacted. May God bless and protect us all. Email from Tower Command at redacted.gov.uk to Tower. All staff are to read Operative Blake's report immediately. All SDC members guarding voluntary inmates are being dispatched to the Vatican immediately. All documents relating to Zero's pregnancies are to be collected and brought to command immediately. May God bless and protect us all. From Tower Automated at redacted.gov.uk to Tower, all staff catastrophic event procedure has been enacted. Extraction is not an option. May God bless and have mercy upon us all. 8 years in the department, and I've never even drawn my gun, let alone shot anybody. But there I was, staring over the muzzle of my Smith & Wesson at a man's body. His blood spread in a pool on the dirty linoleum. To be fair, he was trying to stab me with a really big hunting knife. It was just after 9, only 2 hours left on my afternoon shift when a call came in. Crazed man with knife was how the 911 dispatcher put it. The incident was occurring at the Quickie Mart down on Center Street. I arrived first. Tony Alvarez, the other deputy on duty that night, came barreling into the parking lot, maybe 10 seconds behind me. This isn't a big town. There's usually only 2 of us on patrol at any given time. Doug Elliott, a local guy I know from church, was standing in the lot. He was pointing at the store entrance with one arm and windmilling with the other, like a third base coach waving me home. Inside, Lindsay Knopp was crouched and crying in a corner by a cash register. Blood seeped between her fingers. Her hand was clamped down on a nasty gash running half the length of her forearm, and in front of the counter was a man I didn't recognize. He was hopping from one foot to the other and shouting about waking something up. What really drew my attention, though, was the huge hunting knife that he was waving in the air. It was stained with blood. Probably Lindsay's, I thought. "Well, hold on there, fella," I said, one hand motioning for calm while the other hovered near my pistol. "All right. How about you put that knife down and we talk about whatever's got you so upset?" It was the best I could come up with off the cuff. Verbal de-escalation. It's never been my strong suit. "We woke it up," he said. "Don't you understand? It's awake." Now, he didn't look like the type of guy who'd go on a rampage like this. Seemed pretty normal. I mean, other than the giant bloody knife. He was clean-shaven with neatly trimmed brown hair, clean clothes, and he was wearing a dark blue windbreaker with a 40N Global logo on the left breast. Now, I didn't know anything about 40N Global. All I knew was that they were the outfit that bought the old Ogden mine in the foothills behind the town. The guy looked exactly like what you would expect. Some middle manager in a big corporation looks like that, except for his face. The only words that came to my mind to describe it are gleeful malice. That's what I told the sheriff when I gave my statement. I was kind of worried that might have been a little over the top for an official report, but none of that matters now, I guess. "Well, no, I don't understand," I answered him, trying to be all calm and soothing. "But, I tell you what, if you put that knife down, you could explain it to me. Maybe we could even get some coffee or a raspberry icy something." "I am a messenger," he shrieked, and he lunged at me. The knife arced down towards my head. Now I have no actual memory of shooting him. 1 second I was watching that blood-stained knife coming straight from my face, and the next I was looking through a haze of gun smoke at the dead body. My ears were ringing, and the stench of blood and cordite were filling my nostrils. Alvarez handcuffed the body of the 40N guy. I know it sounds silly, but it's protocol once the perp was secure. Tony checked for a pulse. After 30 seconds or so, he shook his head and went to check on Lindsay. The first aid kit under the counter didn't have much more than Band-Aids and aspirin, so we bandaged her wound with feminine hygiene pads and duct tape he found on the store shelves. While he did all that, I just kind of stood there. Yeah, I don't think I'm really cut out for this job. My ears were still ringing from the muzzle blast when Sheriff Jenkins arrived on scene. He had to shout for me to hear him. He'd gone off duty hours ago, but he was still in uniform. "Well, sounds like it was justified," he said, once he had eased into my field of vision and got my attention. It's not a good idea to startle the dazed guy while he's still holding a loaded gun. It sounded like he was talking to me underwater. I talked to Alvarez, he said, speaking loudly and enunciating each word. He says it was a righteous shoot. Same with a witness outside. Of course, I'm sure all that will be backed up by the store's surveillance cameras. Investigation shouldn't take long at all. But until then, I will need your duty piece, Sheriff Jenkins said, pointing at the gun hanging loosely from my fingers. Careful now, he warned as I handed it over. I noticed my finger was still inside the trigger guard. Hey, Sheriff. Tony called from where he was kneeling beside Lindsay. She's going to need stitches. EMS should be here by now, but I can't get dispatch. Something else our town was too small for was a hospital. There was an urgent care on East Main Street, but all they really did was write scripts for antibiotics and pass out cold compresses. Besides, they closed at 5 o'clock. For anything more serious or after hours, you had to go to the over at the river at Crestview Memorial in Chago. It was only a 15-minute drive or so it's not enough for people to get too worked up over. Try your cell phone then, the sheriff suggested. Tony held up his phone. I already did. No service. It's the damnedest thing. It was all working just fine a few minutes ago, but now bupkis. I checked my phone mostly because I needed something to do with my hands. My display also showed no service, and I was down to 11% on my battery. By the look on the sheriff's face, he didn't have any service either. The sheriff held up a finger. He then strode around the counter and tried the landline beside the cash register. He listened for a moment and then tapped the disconnect button several times. He shook his head. We had no way to communicate with anyone beyond shouting distance. Sheriff Jenkins told Alvarez to take Lindsay over to Crestview Memorial in his squad car, and that while he was there to get in contact with the state police and the coroner investigating shootings and removing bodies, it was well above our pay grade. Complete strangers would decide if I'd acted in self-defense or if I was a murderer. While Alvarez was doing all that, the sheriff said he'd take my statement here. He apologized for making me do it at the scene, but there was no way around it. It had to be secured for the evidence, but he couldn't let me go until I gave the statement with the phones and radios both out. He couldn't even get a hold of the on-call deputies to take over at the Cookie Mart so we could do this at the station. In the end, I explained just how and why I shot a man dead, all while standing over his body, being careful not to step in his blood. When I got to the part about his expression of gleeful malice, I pointed at his face. Even in death, he was still wearing it. When we were done, he told me to go home, try to get some sleep, and for the love of all that's holy, don't drink. The state boys would probably want to get their own statement when they got here. If I had alcohol on my breath, they might get the idea that I started drinking before the shooting, not after, as I stepped out of the Quickie Mart. Alvarez came screeching into the parking lot again, Lindsay still in the front seat of the cruiser. He ran into the store, motioning for me to follow. Bridges are closed, he said, breathless as he ran past. Both of them. Now our town, since nestled in a bend on the Clarion River. We're bordered on 3 sides by water. The only ways in and out of the town are the South Street Bridge, which leads to Chago, and with the tree-covered hills that we like to call mountains behind us, we are pretty isolated. The Ogden mine was about as far as anyone dared go inland, and not many folks would go even that far. The place has always had a kind of spooky feel to it, my grandfather claimed. That the mine had an escape tunnel that came out in the hills. He said you could walk almost the whole way there underground. He worked there for years, right up until they closed it in the mid-90s. I'm not sure I believe a lot of the things my grandfather told me, especially when he'd been drinking. Bridges are closed, Alvarez repeated to the sheriff, once inside, mopping sweat from his forehead with a handkerchief. They got soldiers manning barricades on both. They're not letting anybody through. The army closed the bridges, Sheriff Jenkins asked. Now why the hell would they do that? It ain't the army. Alvarez said, private contractors, I think Blackwater or Aegis Defense, something like that. How do you know? Because I was in the army, and they ain't it, Alvarez explained. They got trucks with electronic warfare jammers too. That's why the radios and cell phones don't work. They're jamming the signals. I've seen trucks just like that when I was in. Alvarez's eyes went wide. Then he gasped, then let out a long, low groan before just falling on his face. He landed beside the man in the 40-in windbreaker. Blood welled from a wound between his shoulder blades. Adding to the already coagulating pool on the floor, Lindsay stood behind him, holding the hunting knife in a white-knuckled grip. Its blade was slick and red. I never saw her pick up the knife. Come to think of it, I never even saw her come back into the store. "It's awake," she said, "and it's coming back. I have to tell people I am the messenger." Now Lindsay, Sheriff Jenkins started taking a step towards her. She spun and slashed the blade across his stomach. He stared in shock for a moment before a wave of red washed down the front of his uniform trousers. Lindsay turned the blade on me. Then my hand snatched at my holster, but it was empty. Her face twisted into that same deranged smile as the 40-in guy. She whipped the knife high above her head, spattering the front of my shirt with blood, and then she charged. I froze, like a deer in the headlights. I just stood there, my mind a complete blank. And then for the second time that night, my ears rang from the blast of a gunshot. Sheriff Jenkins dropped to the floor, landing with his back against the ATM. Blood poured out of the gash in his stomach. In one hand, he held his still smoking service pistol. The other clutched his wound, desperately trying to hold on to what life remained inside him. His eyes lost their focus, and his chin dropped to his chest. Sheriff Jenkins toppled over sideways. I couldn't help but retching. I can't be sure how long I stood there in a puddle of my own puke. I was surrounded by dead bodies, but my ears had stopped ringing. The sea of blood closed in around me. I leapt over the spreading pool in front of me, and I managed to stumble out into the parking lot. Heat slapped me in the face. My legs were shaking so bad, I barely made it up to the patrol car. And that's when I heard it. A voice from the sky. "Attention. This area is under quarantine and has been placed on level 4 lockdown. An immediate curfew has been initiated. All residents are instructed to shelter in place. Violations of this order will not be tolerated. Deadly force has been authorized." A rectangular object hovered over the traffic light at the intersection of Center ST and Timble Avenue. It was a drone, and not the kind you'd find at a hobby shop. It was mounted with some kind of PA system. The drone moved off to the next intersection and repeated the message. Why were we on lockdown, and who the hell authorized deadly force? I climbed into my cruiser, and I headed for the South Street Bridge. It was the closest. As I pulled under the bridge, a spotlight on the far end blinded me. I stopped and stepped halfway out of the cruiser. I squinted at the light, shielding my eyes. "Sheriff's Department," I said, pointing at my badge with my free hand. "What the hell is going on here? You are in violation of the curfew order. You have 30 seconds to comply. Deadly force has been authorized," said the same amplified voice I'd heard from the drone. "By who?" I said back. "Who authorized deadly force?" 20 seconds. "Whose authority are you under?" I said. I tried for a stern, commanding tone, but I think I missed. There was some sort of commotion at the far end of the bridge. This time, the voice behind the spotlight wasn't amplified, but I could hear it anyway. "Weapons free," it said. Orange light strobed above the river. It was followed a split second later by a sound like tearing cloth. Their drones were armed. The spotlight swung to my right, and it angled down toward the water. Illuminated in its harsh light was a bullet-riddled yellow kayak. It was clumsily spray painted with hot rod flames, and a body sat slumped in the seat. I couldn't see his face, but it was TJ. I knew it was TJ Combs. I recognized that kayak. He must have been trying to escape lockdown. The kayak was taking on water through all the bullet holes. It rolled over and started to sink, and TJ's body floated free in his life jacket. The drone shot him another round of bullet, just to be sure. I think it was then that I started to scream. But then the drone turned its gun on me. Bullets stitched across the hood of my squad car, smashing holes in the windshield. I was able to duck before the gun cut me in half, but just barely. The gunfire paused, and my flight reflex kicked in. I shot out from behind my cruiser. The drone fired 2 more bursts after me, and then it fell silent. Maybe the gun jumped or ran out of ammo, I thought. Maybe they were just trying to scare me off. Half a block down the street, I moved into a residential area. I cut through backyards and I snuck across alleyways, always keeping an ear out for the drones. Then I worked my way home. I didn't know where else to go. I saw nobody else outside. All the houses were just completely dark. Their doors and windows were tightly closed, even in this heat. I could still hear intermittent rips of machine gun fire coming from the river, though, so not everybody was staying inside. The drones must have some kind of night vision or heat sensors, I thought. How else were they able to spot TJ on the water before they put the spotlight on him? And I knew I had to get out of town. I need to get somewhere where my cell phone would work, or where I could tell people what the hell was going on here. Crossing the river was a no-go. But on the other side of town is Bixby. It's a little village that's a little bigger than we are. There's no roads between here and Bixby. Our mountains are plenty steep and treacherous. Those 6 miles between our towns can get pretty wild. It'll be a very easy thing to fall down a bluff, break a leg, or twist an ankle, and die of exposure at the bottom of some ravine, and I couldn't navigate that kind of terrain at night. If those drones had heat sensors like I thought they did, I might have a better chance of going undetected during the day. As hot as it was, maybe I wouldn't show up on their sensors at all, and it seemed like my best bet. All I needed to do, though, was just to get home. I could pack some supplies and hole up until sunrise. I cut through the yards between houses until I finally came out on my own street. I was just a few doors up from my place. In the glow of the street light, I could see my neighbor Jerry standing at the edge of our shared driveway. He was wearing a terry cloth bathrobe over pajamas and corduroy slippers. There was an aluminum bat in his hand. He was tapping it nervously against the side of his leg, and I didn't like the looks of that, but he'd already spotted me, so I decided to play it casual. "Oh, hey, Jerry," I said as I approached him. Some night, he had that look on his face, the same one Lindsay had. Jerry pointed the bat at the mountains rising up, behind our houses. "They don't want us to leave," he said. Euclid Lane was on the edge of town. On our side of the street, all the backyards bordered a field overgrown with scrub grass and a few maple tree saplings. Beyond that field, heavily wooded bluffs rose into the mountains that separated River Bend from Bixby near the top. I could see an orange glow fanning out across the face of the hills. A spark dropped from the sky. It flashed when it struck the ground and added to the spreading glow. They were using the drones to firebomb the forest, I realized, and the fire was moving fast. The wind was pushing the flames straight for the town by morning. There'd be nothing left of River Bend but ash, whatever was going on. Somebody was willing to murder a whole town to cover it up. They think they can stop it, but they can't, Jerry began. It's awake now, and it's coming back. We have to tell people. I held up my hands. "Jerry, look, I am the messenger." He interrupted and swung the bat right at my head. I managed to duck just in time, but it was close enough that I felt a whiff of air on the back of my neck. Jerry swung so hard, though, that the momentum spun him around. He lost traction on the gravel drive, and his feet shot out from under him. He landed hard enough that I heard his teeth clack together with the impact. He was unfazed, though. He immediately scrambled to get back up, and I kicked him in the ribs as hard as I could. I felt something crunch under the toe of my boot. Jerry fell back and groaned, and he stared into the night sky for a moment, and then his eyes locked with mine, have to tell. He croaked, blood frothing on his lips. Jerry was a good guy. You know, I always liked him, right up until he tried to kill me with a softball bat. His eyes turned away from me, looking at something beyond. Actually, he was looking at something behind me, and I turned to see what it was. A dozen or more of my neighbors were approaching. There were people I recognized, and some I even knew pretty well, and every one of them carried some kind of improvised weapon. Garden tools, kitchen implements, sporting goods. I saw Amy Freeman waving a garden weasel around like she was trying to swat flies. Drew Austin was also in the crowd, a butcher knife in each hand, and so many more knives tucked into his belt that if he bent over, he'd cut himself in half. Tom McCready had a pump shotgun. with a ridiculously long barrel that he used for duck hunting, and they all had that look. Tom wrapped the side of his shotgun, and I ran. I had to jump over Jerry, who was coughing up gobs of bloody spittle. I darted between our two houses. It was the only direction open to me, crossing the overgrown field behind my house. It was like one of those nightmares, where you're trying to run from something, but your feet feel like they're sinking into mud. The waist-high scrub grass wrapped around my ankles with each step. Yells, "If I am the messenger, let me know that they were close behind." I didn't need to look back. It seemed like every time I heard those words tonight, somebody was trying to kill me when I reached the far end of the field and started up the wooded slope of the mountain. The sound of pursuit had fallen off. After all, I was running towards the fire. Maybe they figured I'd wind up killing myself and save them the trouble. I had something else in mind, though. I just hoped that story my grandfather used to tell was for real and not some tall tale. He never talked much about his days as a miner, but every once in a while, when he'd been drinking, he'd tell the story of the time he got lost in the old part of the mine. The darkness will whisper to you down there. You just blurt out after his fourth or fifth drink. It's a dreamy voice, a talking in its sleep kind of voice, but it'll tell a man things he ought not know. He'd go on to explain how he got separated from his crew. He'd tell everyone how he wandered into the old part of the mine. He knew it was the old part because there were tracks on the floor for mine carts, and they didn't use those anymore. It was more efficient to haul the coal out on conveyor belts. He leaned forward and tell me about feeling a puff of breeze on his cheek. He followed it until he found the escape tunnel. At this point, Grandpa would pour himself another drink and tell how he walked 6 miles underground to emerge on a bluff overlooking Bixby. If you ever get lost down there, he'd finish. Find your way to the old mine and bear as far right as you can. Once you feel the air on your cheek, follow that tunnel up and out. Just don't listen to the darkness. Don't listen to it whisper. With that, he would drain his glass, close his eyes, and within a few minutes be softly snoring. I don't know of anybody who actually believed his story. The general consensus was that nobody ever went into the old mines for any reason. They were just too dangerous. But for my sake, I hoped it was true, trapped in a town full of crazies between mercenaries with machine gun drones on one side and a forest fire on the other. The mine was my only option. So I scrambled up the hillside. I lunged from one tree trunk to the next to pull myself over the rougher parts. The going got easier once I made it up the first ridge and stepped onto Ogden Road. It's a 2-lane blacktop leading back to the mine. I was able to jog a good way. Until the smoke came down off the mountain, it got too thick, and by the time I reached the parking lot at the mine entrance, my uniform was soaked with sweat, and my body was trying desperately to cough up both my lungs. Up until 40 Inn had bought our property, our department would come up here twice a week to check for vandalism or signs of intrusion. Several months had passed since the last time I'd been here, and a good bit had changed. The formerly cracked and vacant parking area had been resurfaced. It now bathed in the glow of portable area lights. Office trailers were arranged in a horseshoe around the entrance. A few late-model high-end SUVs were clustered at the far end of the lot, and everything was emblazoned with the 40N Global logo. There were bodies as well. 3 of them. All of them were wearing chinos and windbreakers, just like that guy at the Quickie Mart, and all had met very violent ends. The guard shack by the entrance was empty, but the gate to the mine itself stood open. So I pulled it open and stepped inside. It was not what I was expecting at all. Instead of dirt, rock, and darkness, I found myself in a tube. It was well lit with LEDs, and the air was clean and smoke-free. There must be some filtering system. All the surfaces were pristine. I headed down the slope. The tube bypassed 3 levels, opening only in the lowest gallery. It opened into a long, wide tunnel with branches evenly spaced on either side. As I understood it, that's how the coal was mined. A gallery was dug through the middle of a seam and then excavated out to the edges through the side tunnels. They'd leave enough material between those tunnels to support the ceiling. At any rate, the last tunnel on the right-hand side was only 2/3 down the length of the gallery directly in front of it. It was a low, brightly lit platform. There was no rumble of generators, and I had to wonder where the power came from. On the platform was an array of consoles, computers, and what I can only guess were some sort of sensors. Everything was oriented towards the last side tunnel. The thought crossed my mind that I could just stay here. I could hide until the fire burned out, but it was pretty obvious that those Fertion people had put a lot of effort into this place. They'd be coming back to reclaim it. Besides, I needed to tell someone what was happening here. That side tunnel, it seemed like my best bet. The tunnel was dark. Even though the sheriff took my pistol, I was still wearing my duty belt. I had a palm-sized but insanely bright flashlight clipped between my handcuffs, and clicking it on, I moved forward. Maybe 50 or 60 feet deep, the tunnel had been closed off with a thick wall of Lexan. There was a keypad-operated door in the middle, and a sign beside read Authorized Personnel Only. Level 4 Psych Hazard Protection required beyond this point. Another body lay on the floor, shining my flashlight through the Lexan. I could see a ragged hole at the end, and beyond that, another tunnel running perpendicular. I could just make out the rails of a minecart track. It was an old mine. All I had to do, I got into that tunnel, worked my way to the far right, and then followed the air current to the surface. But the door, of course, was locked. I kicked the Lexan in frustration. I was about to go back to the platform to see if maybe somebody had written down the key code on a sticky note or something. And then I noticed 3 of the keys on the pad were covered with bloody fingerprints. 3 to 4 and 7. Maybe I could crack the code, I thought. There's only so many ways you can arrange 3 numbers, and it turns out there are 6 ways. None of them worked. Again, I wanted to scream and kick something. Instead, I looked at the keypad more closely. The ridges and swirls of the fingerprints on the 3 and 4 were sharp and clear, while the print on the 7 was smudged. And then I got the idea that maybe someone had pressed 7 twice. I tried 3477 and 7347. No result. But when I keyed 7734, the door popped open with a hiss, and I was so relieved that I never thought to wonder who left those bloody prints. The old mine was scary. There was no orderly and logical layout, no main galleries with evenly spaced side branches. The tunnels meandered haphazardly, following coal seams. They were low and narrow. Instead of steel beam supports, the walls and ceiling were shored up with timbers so old it looked like they might crumble at a touch. Trickles of dirt and tiny pebbles fell from the ceiling randomly. Unlike the newer section, the atmosphere here was dark and oppressive somehow. It required effort to move air in and out of my lungs. My flashlight didn't seem as bright as it had before. It wasn't like the batteries were dying, but it was. Like the darkness here was thicker, heavier somehow. Probably my mind was just playing tricks on me, I decided. I moved to my left, which would be east towards Bixby, and as soon as I came to the tunnel branch that led to the ride, I took it. The darkness closed in even tighter, compressing the cone of light in front of me. I passed 3 more branching tunnels, but I just kept going straight. I was looking for the far right of the mine and that puff of air on my cheek that would lead me out. I started to wonder if maybe my initial orientation had been off. Maybe I was heading left or forward, backward. Who knows? I stopped moving. I tried to calm myself. I knew that if I panicked, I would die down here. And that's when I heard it. Ragged breathing. It was coming from behind me. I spun around and raised my flashlight, and that probably saved my life. Another 40 in middle management type was coming at me, covered in dirt and gore. His face was that same demented mask I've been seeing on my friends and neighbors. I'm the messenger. He snarled, and he swung a shovel at my head. When the light hit him in the eyes, he flinched. Instead of burying itself in the side of my skull, the shovel struck me on the left shoulder. The edge of the blade bit into my skin, and the wound wasn't fatal, but it did make me drop my light. I definitely need stitches and a tetanus booster. My attacker wrenched the shovel blade for another swing, accidentally striking one of the shaft supports. The wood was as rotten as it looked, and it cracked and buckled. Having lost its support on one end, the ceiling beam swung down, and it struck him on the temple, knocking him to his knees. My flashlight lay on the tunnel floor beside him, and in the glow, I saw him just shake off the blow. He gripped the shovel tighter and started to rise. My left arm was numb and useless. I was dehydrated at that point, and my lungs were seared from the smoke I'd inhaled. He was opening his mouth to speak when the roof collapsed right on top of him, and he was instantly buried, along with my flashlight, under tons of rock. I stumbled backward as I was sprayed with dust and rock chips. I tripped and fell, and I hit my head on the cart rail. I don't know how long I was out. Seconds, minutes, hours maybe. Probably wasn't that long, because the air was still full of dust when I came to. It was almost impossible to breathe. My hand came away wet and sticky when I touched the back of my head. The cold fingers of panic had started plucking at me. It took a few minutes to calm myself down, and when I finally did, I started crawling with one hand on the rail as a guide. I didn't know what else to do. Grandpa was right. The darkness does whisper, only it's not a sleepy voice. It must be some kind of mind trick. Maybe my brain was trying to fill the void of losing my sight completely by making stuff up in the darkness down here in the deep dark. My mind, yeah, it made up voices to compensate for the lack of sight. But why would it say such awful things? I crawled on following that rail until it just ended. I was terrified of losing contact with it. I reached out as far as I could all around me, finding nothing but empty space. And this was it. After everything I'd been through, I was going to slowly die down here in the dark. And maybe it was still dark. That made me notice that little puff of air on my face. I sat up, holding very still, and I felt it again. I let go of the rail, and I crawled forward. I stopped every few seconds, waiting to feel that whisper of cool air, and each time I found it, it got a little stronger and stronger until there was a constant breeze. Soon I found a wall, and I climbed to my feet, shuffling forward, my hand trailing along the rough stone, always keeping that little draft in my face. It was a painfully long and slow walk, but as long as I could feel that bit of air gently caressing my cheek, I had hope. And finally I saw it, not light, but a rectangle of something less dark. I had to force myself not to run. Be a damn shame to trip and bash my brains out when I was so close. The less dark rectangle became gray, and soon I could see stars, and then I was out. I found myself standing on a bluff facing east. The far horizon was just beginning to pale with the coming sunrise, and the lights of Bixby twinkled below me. The town was maybe a mile and a half away, and the walk would be downhill. I made it. I'd survived, and now I could tell people what was happening in Riverbend. That was the most important thing, to tell people. They had to know. It was awake. It was coming back, and I am the messenger.